CEO for Our Country, Our Choice, uh, it really became unavoidable. And what's happened is that I now have someone who manages that account for me, and there are real restrictions on what he can put there. It has to come from me. It has to be a direct quote from something I've written or said on television or some other medium, because I really don't want to get involved in these pointless back and forth attacks with idiots on Twitter.
Yeah.
And as a general rule, you know me, I hate social media.
Yeah.
I really despise it. But it's unavoidable. If you don't make use of it, you can't get the message out, which is really what we're interested in.
Yeah. Well, could you tell me a little bit about Our Country, Our Choice, or is that something that's under wraps still?
No, no, it's just that we're at the beginning
Yeah.
and we've had an overwhelming response.
Hmm.
We're up to about 10,000 people who want to be members. And we didn't expect it. We thought this would take a little longer to get started because we're not really firing on all cylinders. We're going to be located in Orlando, where we're trying to set up a headquarters, and we're still hiring people. We have a lot of talented people. We got a lot of people that want to work with us and for us, and we're deeply grateful for it. But imagine, if Noah built the ark for 50 animals and 5,000 showed up. Well, we're in the 5,000 category right now, playing catch up. And what we're really, really about, I think, in the narrow sense, is these are people with traditional conservative values who are appalled at this uniparty, who are fed up with the failure of the Democrats and the Republicans to really produce anything that's of importance to the American people. And the American people want to be protected. They want to live in a country where there's the rule of law. They're sick of all the criminals being released and then people who are not criminals being prosecuted, as we've just seen, by the way, with these January 6 people, this fiction that there was an insurrection, which is absurd. And then on top of that, you've got the problems at the border, the open borders, the endless wars. And I started to talk about these things and other issues that I mentioned about, here's the poor American worker who works all of his life, and then he could look forward to $1,400 a month from Social Security, and someone enters our country illegally, is handed $2,200 a month and a ticket to wherever he or she wants to go inside our country, after which, of course, other than continuing to receive free funding for whatever it is they do, they disappear. So that's very upsetting to people, and they're tired of the sexualization of children. I mean, basically, we're talking about security for Americans first. That means also ending these pointless and self-defeating conflicts. And most Americans don't even know where Ukraine is, and if they do, they certainly don't want to fight there. And the whole war is a catastrophe. It's murdered the Ukrainian nation. And we're the the executioners in that sense. The Russians have actually restrained themselves dramatically and held back because they're very strong. We're very much in a position to march very rapidly west, especially now where there's almost nothing out there to stop them. So I think people want to join us because they want an advocate for what's right, and they want a way to try and hold people in Washington accountable for all the corruption and stupidity, and they can't rely on the people they voted for. So what we want to do is, first of all, we want to give people a platform where they can speak. We want to help them organize across the country against this swamp, this sort of hopeless government that we have and the corruption that it represents. And then we want to help people hold these politicians accountable. Now, how do we do that? By making it clear what they really think and what they really do. I mean, a lot of these people stand up there and you think you're listening to Ronald Reagan in 1982, and then they go in and behave like Karl Marx.
Yeah.
So this sort of thing has got to end. So all of those things wrapped up together is really what our country, our choice is about. Now, we're trying to stay away from some of the more divisive issues because we want to unite people as much as possible. We want to focus on those things where we can agree, where we can have an impact. So I think that's our country, our choice. We're trying to build a media platform that will keep people informed, help them on the local level, let them also provide information about what's happening in their particular area. So we're going to try and ultimately pay workers, people that are part of the organization, we call them guardians, it will be all over the country in all of our states. And ultimately, we'd love to have somebody in every congressional district so that we get the ground truth. We find out what's really happening, and then we can also help and assist them. This is all going to take time, but we're really overwhelmed with the positive response we've gotten. And I think we're going to end up with, at some point, millions of members, to be frank. But we won't be able to accommodate that until the end of this year, November, December timeframe. And then I think as we move into 2024, hopefully we'll become a real force that the political environment, the people that are representing us or not representing us have to deal with.
So is it a media platform or like a nonprofit lobby group, or how does it, like, what is?
No, we are not a nonprofit, because we think if you can't pay people on the ground to advocate for the right things, you're going to fail.
Right.
This has been a problem on the right. If you look at the left, you go back to the 2020 election or the 2016 election, you go to any of the polling stations, there are 30, 40, 50 lawyers there bankrolled by the left to ensure that things go the way the left wants them to. There's nobody there advocating for us, the American people. And I think that has to happen. So we're not a nonprofit. We have investors. I think we're going to have more investors. Obviously, if people want to contribute to us, we're grateful for it. But, in this time frame, we did not want to build an organization that's designed to become a movement for what's in the interest of the country and then ask people in crappy times like the ones we live in for money. Right. I mean, we don't want to ask Americans who want to join us for money. We say, no, bring your energy, bring your imagination, bring your ideas, and we'll do everything we can to incorporate you and maximize that. But we're not asking anybody for money. So Joining this is free. And as I said, if we got to say 1 million plus, we would have 8,000 guardians, and these people would be the paid infrastructure that helps guide the larger movement, because it's really about a movement. We've had our national identity diluted through this uncontrolled immigration that is really killing us. And now we hear terrible stories about people coming in with all sorts of medical conditions and diseases. We have people in Central America dying of encephalitis and malaria on the way up here. We want to put a stop to this. We're tired of hearing about little girls who are 11 years old being gang raped before they cross the border from Mexico into the United States. We want this to stop. And we want to stop the criminals inside our country. So these are the things we want to do. We're going to stop this stupid war in Ukraine that is killing people pointlessly. We don't want regional or global war with Russia or China or anybody else. We think we can cope with these things, but we got to build prosperity too. We got to get back to the economy, secure our country, and build it up. These are the things that I think most Americans can agree upon.
Do you think your military background helps you in organizing this structure you're building? You call them guardians?
Well, maybe, but look, this is way beyond the military. And remember, we're not recruiting soldiers. We're just asking citizens to come on board and work with us. That's a different kettle of fish. So we're not issuing any commands. What we're doing is we're saying, task number 1, build membership. Task number 2, let's organize ourselves into groups that are focused on specific issues that we care about, like the ones I've been discussing. And then 3, once we've done those kinds of things, we need to build the larger infrastructure of the country with the guardians and so forth. So this is a process that's going to take some time. We've got to ramp up, and we're going to do that as quickly as possible. But I'm not saying it's easy, and I want everybody to understand that we're not trying to recruit a group for a revolution. If we're going to have a revolution, we would like it to be democratic and peaceful. We're not interested in any fringe groups that think they're going to change Washington overnight by marching in. That's nonsense. We understand this is a battle that's going to take months, maybe in some cases years. We're prepared to fight it, but it's not about arming anybody or involving in violence. We're all disgusted with the violence that we saw in 2020. Yeah. We want the rule of law enforced. Enforce the damn laws. Back the police. Do whatever is required in these big cities to get control of things again. And that's not happening. And that's what we believe in.
Now, some folks have suggested for years, though, besides Trump and Tucker Carlson, it's just basically you who are national known figures who are for a realistic foreign policy. And some have used that to say, Colonel McGregor, would you ever be interested in political office down the road or at some point?
And the answer is I am not interested in running for office. I
Yeah.
have experience with that. I've always been very critical of people who served in the military for long periods. I'm not talking about someone who's in for 3, 4, 5 years, or even for that matter, some 20-year officer who decides to retire, a senior NCO, and wants to run for office. I'm talking about senior officers, people like me and those who've served for 25, 30, 35 years. In theory, we're professional soldiers, and I don't see us as ideally suited, to govern the country by any means. I am very interested in the sad state of our military, and I would like to see the military fundamentally stripped down, rebuilt, reoriented, and moved in new directions. That's a different matter. That's what I've always been about. And I'm about the foreign policy, which is inseparable from our military, because we've militarized our foreign policy. Our answer to everything is bomb them.
Yeah.
We bully everybody all the time. We bully them with our financial system. We sanction people, and then we invade them. This has got to end.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that people are just so exhausted because they feel that the Republican Party is completely lockstep with the Democrats. I mean, Mitch McConnell was over there saying, he's proud of Biden's work with Ukraine. He's just not doing it fast enough and competent enough and giving him the money. This is in stark contrast to where the populist base of both the Democrat and Republican Party really is on this matter. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. representing the Democrat base, which still has a populist tinge to it and some anti-war elements. It just seems as if their respective bases are always shut out of the political process when it comes to representation.
No, I agree with you completely. And I think very highly of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I think he's absolutely on the right track. And, I tell people all the time that, I'm old enough to have grown up with real Democrats in the 50s and the 60s. And those people were patriots. I lived in an area where, Republicans were about as scarce as hen's teeth, and everybody was a Democrat. But they were all patriots. They all loved the country. There were no differences among us between what was really vital for the nation. I mean, one of the things I tell people all the time, and they all look surprised because, most people don't know their own history. Very few people are aware that when Richard Nixon ran against John F. Kennedy in 1960, Richard Nixon actually won the election. That election was, quote unquote, stolen. And at the time, many people came to Nixon and said, you've got to protest this. This must not stand. And he said, well, we're in a difficult position right now. We're dealing with the Soviet Union. And in 1960, the Soviet Union loomed very large and cast a terrible shadow over the United States and the free world. And he said, I don't think we want to put our country at risk by internal disputes that might give aid and comfort to the Soviet opponent. Then he also said something else. He said, in addition, I know John F. Kennedy. I served with him in the Senate. The man's a patriot. Our country is safe in his hands. Well, that's the point. Our country is not safe in the hands of the people in Washington at all. And I don't care whether it's Biden or McConnell or any others. These people are all focused on self-enrichment. They've financialized the economy. They've subverted the democratic process. And there's no real difference between the people on both sides that are dominating the scene. And they're a danger to our country. This has got to stop. We've got to come up with a counter elite. That's also what we're about, identifying and building up a counter elite. People that share our values, our thinking, and care about the country, love the country, and want this to change. But that world that I grew up in is truly gone. And so when we look at the other people that we're dealing with, and you mentioned McConnell and Biden and Schumer, look at them. What's the difference? Who are we kidding? There is no difference. That's the problem.